everybody. Welcome to Matters Over Miles. I'm Mary Pat Smithson.
I'm Whitney.
Why do you always do that?
Because it's always so
cat.
awkward. It's like, what? Like everyone knows who I am.
No,
at this
they
point.
don't. Anyways, this is the first time somebody did something. They picked this episode, and you just go, I'm Whitney. Anyways, that's Whitney Walker. Hi, we're glad you're here. We are with our good friends from a church in Las Vegas, and this whole season for Matters Over Miles for this podcast show, we have been interviewing some of our close friends in ministry, and it's been wild. It's been really good so far.
It's been really strange, mostly, because we have been traveling in the middle
It's about to
of
get stranger.
times where people are, by and large, not traveling and doing these interviews.
And we decided to do it anyways.
Here we are at
Hooray.
the beginning of 2021, where we all thought for sure life would be normal again.
A year ago. Hey,
not.
a year ago. A couple
I had-
days ago.
I had COVID this time last year.
It's one of the originals.
Yeah.
Just a quick,
OG survivor right here.
little did you know that you were the first person that I knew that actually had COVID.
Yeah.
Tony was really proud of that. He was like, I know someone who has it. It's
Because
real.
Here's the thing.
a real thing.
Like
serious.
before we get into Matters Over Miles
Oh,
here,
this is fantastic.
Nobody even
because
knows
this
who he
matters
is yet.
over
Yeah.
miles. Nobody even
You're
knows.
just
This whole
talking and
thing.
nobody knows who
But
you
This
are.
whole
just want to set the record straight that we're on the West Coast, so like as it was
What?
moving this way, it still in our region
Yeah.
was like, this is fake. Like
Yeah.
I heard from my tax guy at the time, he legitimately asked me, do you even know anybody who's gotten it? And I was like, actually I do. I have a friend that got it. And he's
was
like,
me.
but really got it? I was like, I mean,
Yeah.
yes, like really
She's
got
very
it.
ill.
Tony's
So-
tax guy. This is the.
So
this
it
is
was
the.
kind of like for me,
this is a
it was
person.
like the one moment I could say, yes, I know someone who's actually got it, because that was what was being said
And
over
that
here.
was the
So,
experience that many people that know me had. I was the first person that anyone knew that got it. I was number 53 in the state of Tennessee. It's
Wait,
been-
is that a fact?
Yes.
Wow.
She got like a little email.
Did you get a badge?
Black,
Right? Like
A
they
little
should have
medal?
given me like some
number
kind
53, but number one in our hearts,
Yeah.
Whitney.
of people were like,
Just Whitney, though.
you should get it
Not-
tattooed on you somewhere.
Oh man.
Number 53. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't need that memory etched into my skin.
Well,
Thanks,
with
though.
that beautiful little tidbit, why don't you introduce who our
My gosh.
good friends are?
We are at Calvary Chapel Las Vegas, which how long has that been the name? Like a few years now?
It's been, I think it's been like 6 years now, 5
Okay.
years maybe.
When we
5 or 6
first came
years.
out here in 2014, I'm pretty sure is when it was.
Oh
it
my
was
gosh, I
Calvary
can't
Chapel
believe
Spring
that.
Valley, and it is the largest Calvary Chapel in the Las Vegas area, correct? Gotta
So,
be.
I believe so.
Okay.
I don't know of another
The
one
story
that's
of how
bigger.
we ended up here we'll probably tell at some point on this show.
Oh yay!
But our first connection to this church was Mr. Tony Monto, who is
Him, that guy.
yeah,
Hi, I'm Tony.
he is Tony, and his counterpart now is
Yes.
Miriam.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you
Miriam.
guys virtually.
She's awesome, and together they make the iconic duo of leading
The
worship
worship
here.
leader.
Of Tony and
Of
Miriam,
Tony and Miriam
leading
leading
worship,
worship at Calvary Chapel
Las
Las
Vegas.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, that was
Good
so
times.
good.
And so we wanted to have them on the show because we've known Tony for like 8 years now or something like that, and we've been here probably 5 times at least.
5 or 6. Wow.
We love coming here to lead and to hang out with their family here at Calvary Chapel Vegas. And lots of times when we say that we're going to Las Vegas, it's like we're very excited and we're like, yeah, we're going to Vegas. this weekend."
Vegas.
And
People are like,
like,
huh?
that seems peculiar for you guys. And we're excited because we really love like the churches out here. It's awesome. So we wanted to have Tony and Miriam on today so that we could kind of talk about what life is like living in Las Vegas and what it means to kind of do ministry here like on a regular basis because there's lots of stereotypes. A big part of this podcast series like these episodes have been just giving people a window into church in America, like in places that they don't normally have a chance to
Yes.
go and experience church. I mean, a lot of people have been to Las Vegas, but it's
For
many
various
other
reasons.
things. Sometimes completely innocent and fine things, sometimes not, but usually like it's not to go to church. I'm going out to Las Vegas to go to church.
Yes.
So yeah, we wanted to kind of have a conversation with you guys, and wherever it goes, it goes.
Oh gosh, that was
Especially with this one over here, I feel like is a loaded statement, but that's okay. So maybe we can start off by. Do you want to talk about like how we got here, how we ended up here? Is
let's do that.
important?
Yeah, let them. Well,
You
because
want them to
Miriam got
introduce
here.
themselves?
Yeah.
Okay,
A
cool.
little bit after the fact.
Tony,
so-
can you just like tell us about like how you started working at this church and how long you've been here, and then kind of segue over to Miriam so she can answer the same question.
Yeah.
I've been on staff here now for 12 years. Wow. It'll be 13 years in September of 2021. So 12 years for me. And I went to Bible college. There's a Bible college that's connected to Calvary Chapel called Calvary Chapel Bible College in Marietta, California. So I went there and graduated from there. I met my wife in college. She's from out here, and she felt like God was leading her back out here with her family. And I just really liked her a lot, and so I just followed right along. And so there wasn't really necessarily like I was called to marry my wife for sure, but I didn't necessarily. I think God, in my innocence and maybe my ignorance of not really, I was kind of open to anything that God had for me. So it wasn't really like, God, am I supposed to go to Las Vegas? I just knew I was supposed to marry this girl. So it was like, where she could have went to Zimbabwe and I would have followed her. So, so like for me, it was kind of like there wasn't this big like reckoning moment for me that was like, you are supposed to be called to Las Vegas. And I have like a personal thing, I guess, that it's more of like, I don't necessarily, and I don't really have this like deep rooted in scripture. So if you have something that's like against this, don't like come after me or anything like that.
Just come after it.
Just
me
go
and MP.
after
Yeah, that's fine. We'll
Whitney.
be gatekeepers.
And so
Just me. Just come after
because
me.
it's her podcast and Mary Pat's podcast, so just go after them. But I kind of feel like God doesn't really call people to places, but people for people.
Ooh.
And so I don't necessarily feel like it's like, well, God loves.
I think I agree with that. So you can come after me if you want.
It's not necessarily like God loves this location, even though he created it, and I believe he does, but I think that he loves the people more than just the specific location. So for me, it wasn't necessarily like you're called to Las Vegas, and it was you're called to like minister to people, and you're called to minister and worship, lead for people, and to lead people in God's presence. And so honestly, I could have done that anywhere, and I could do that anywhere. I just feel like the calling on my life is just wherever you want me, Lord. I just want to fulfill what you've called me to do. So I went out to Las Vegas, and but I applied for the position here. I applied as a janitor here, and I got the position as a janitor. And so I was a janitor here for a year, and then just volunteered in worship and started leading a couple months as I was volunteering. I started my pastor, his name's Pastor Derek. He asked me to start leading worship a couple months into it on Saturday nights, and then it just kind of went from there. So I've worn a ton of different hats. I was a janitor here for about a year, and then did audio, visual, and lighting for a little bit, and did I pastored young adults for about 6 or 7 years, and kind of a bunch of encompassing things, a lot of missions, a lot of different trips and stuff like that. And now recently, I was ordained as a pastor a number of years back, and has been serving as a pastor here and on our leadership team here as well. And so, that's kind of my story of getting involved here at Calvary, but yeah.
That's amazing.
Not too long ago as well.
Yes.
Yeah, not too long ago. I think this year it'll be 3 years, which is
Hooray!
pretty cool. I love the number 3. I always say try something 3 times before you decide if you like it. So
It's my
I
favorite
like
number,
it,
by the
just
way.
so you know. Really?
Yep, 'cause
Look at
it's
these two.
born in March,
Iconic
which is
duo.
Third month.
their month.
And
But
it
yeah.
is March, you
Wow.
guys.
Ooh.
Whoa.
This is amazing.
And what time is it?
No.
Dang, it is 12:22. Crazy.
My
That's
gosh. Miriam,
Crazy.
please continue.
Well, Yeah, so I was born and raised in Vegas, and I've been here pretty much my whole life, aside from, some minor, like, moved to Arizona for a couple months and then came back. And when I came back, I actually came to work on staff at another church, just doing regular, like, administrative work, front desk. And I always wanted to do worship, but it wasn't, I wasn't like, man, I'm going to be a worship leader. I'm going to work towards that. I just loved ministry in general. So I was involved with the youth ministry there, young adults ministry, and I was doing worship at the time. And then a couple of years go by, and I ended up getting let go. And it was just like God timing, but not the God timing I thought. Like, I was like, oh, God is so good. I'm just like, it's going to be a time for me to just enjoy going to church and, kind of just reset and re-seek him. And just, what am I supposed to do? I was, what was I, 21 when I started working here? I guess, 21.
Holy cats.
Yeah. So that was, I had 1 month, probably less than that, of just like, all right, like, I'm not going to do ministry as a job anymore. I'm just going to start going to church. And I was really excited for that. And then, but God.
Super stoked on that.
And then I had 3 people that have no connection to each other tell me about Calvary Chapel looking for a worship leader.
No way.
Yeah. 3 separate occasions. And it was like just super casual. And then the last person that reached out to me was a guy who was attending here. He was like, hey, it's been on my heart for a while, but I just have to send it to you. Like, I think you should apply for the job at Calvary. And I was like, oh, okay. So I looked at the application and all the expectations. I was like, I'm not even going to apply. Like, why am I going to apply? Like, they're looking for not me. And then I talked to my husband, who was my fiance at the time, and my mom, and they're like, well, the worst thing that can happen is it's not it. And
wow,
that's it. You just, and cool. So it was it. So I applied, and it just worked out. And I've been here for 3 years, and I 100% agree with what Tony said. Like, it's for people. And I think now I'm 24, and that's something that God has really showed me. It's like, I'm not calling you, to this place or to this place so you can do work, but so you can love people, and I can teach you more about that. And so that's been really cool to see, and just how much the church has grown in so many areas. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, okay.
These 2.
What? Really? Yeah, I'm
Tony,
going to start at...
I had no idea that you moved out here, like, for Nikki.
I remember him talking about that.
I don't recall that, but that's, like, super cool.
Yeah.
You're just like, I don't really care what I do. I just want to marry that girl, so I'm going to go wherever she goes.
It legit was that. And I literally, when I moved out here too, I had like, my boss was my landlord, which I will just set the record straight. That is a bad idea in any way, shape, or form when your boss is your landlord. Nice. That's just probably like, that was my naivety. But is that the word?
Is that okay?
That's the word,
yeah.
Right? Don't.
No, Whitney was laughing at something
curious.
else, not that. Keep going.
I was laughing at the idea of like you not paying your rent and your landlord being like, I just paid you, pay me your rent.
Oh.
Well, it kind of was like that. I like moved out here, and then like it was I had a roommate, and I literally pulled into the driveway of the house, and I got a phone call from him. He's like, hey, your roommate is no longer your roommate, so it's just your house, so you have to pay like the full rent. And I had about like 17 cents in my account, and I was like, I can't do that. And I was like a new adult. I've never lived on my own because I went straight from my parents' house in high school straight into Bible college and lived at the campuses. I never had my own place. I didn't know what a down payment was for utilities. I never knew anything about that. So like within the first month, I couldn't pay any of my utilities because I was just paying him rent. So I lived here for 2 months with a headlamp was my electricity at my house because my electricity was turned off. So I like would turn on my headlamp and I'd walk in my house, and then my hot water was turned off. So I took showers in the gymnasium locker rooms here, and then at my girlfriend, now my wife's, at her parents' house when they weren't home, I'd like say, hey, can I take a shower in your guys' house? So I'd take showers in there, or just a really, really cold shower. But it was in the wintertime, so it kind of sucked. But and
the things that grow us.
And then I said,
fantastic.
And then I said, I don't think I can live here any longer. I need to get a different place and stuff like that. He's like, no worries, totally understand. And a foreclosure notice was on the house the next day, and all my stuff got repossessed because it was in the house, and so I'd lost like all my stuff. So
Oh my
so
gosh.
I remember laying in my bed in the middle of the desert in Las Vegas.
What?
With like nothing to my name, my headlamp like on my head, and like, what the heck am I doing here?
Yes.
And,
That's a make it or break it point right there, though. The fact that you're still here laughing about it says a lot about your commitment to the Lord.
I was
And
like,
Ricky,
I don't
but-
know what I'm doing here, but I sure do love this girl. And
Holy crud.
If you didn't know before, you did after that.
I did after that for sure.
It's like, you know what? I'm in it for the long haul, man.
Yeah.
And there's like in that story, there's like 3 other cool stories with it, but we don't have time for all that. But it's just it's cool. The Lord works in great ways.
Gosh.
These are things we do not know about Tony.
This is
so-
great. Whisperings, but not like the full thing. I mean, the you moving because of Nikki, yes, but all of the extra stuff. I do remember you being hired on as a janitor first.
Yeah.
And I always was like, yeah, okay, sure, God. That's
Legit.
great. Just the progression of kindness, like that he just keeps doing. But also, like, we have a lot of people that, I mean, worship leader friends. So just to know that side of your story and to watch where you are now, just as an encouragement to people that it's like, you have no idea what it's going to end up looking like
Yeah.
at the end. And now here you are 13 years almost later. And I continually see the goodness of God, like as I scroll through my feed and I'm like, there's those people I love, just
Yeah, and I think like starting in those kind of areas gives you it gives you kind of a full spec of like everything that God does in a ministry and through a ministry.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
feel like even like as a janitor and when I was working facilities here, when I got a new position, it was like, hey, you got a promotion. And I was like, no, I just got a change of responsibility and a change of like what God
Come
was now
on.
calling me to do. And I feel like
Come
that with
on.
as worship leaders, like the unfortunate thing is like we can look at that as like the primary focus or like the stage focus when there's so many elements of what God does in a ministry.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you start in other areas before you get, and if you have the blessing and opportunity to do that, it is a blessing because it gives you this foundation of it's not about you, even though God's using you and it is amazing and beautiful, but it's not just about that. There's so many facets to the ministry that God is using, and it kind of exemplifies the body of Christ even more so of going, facilities and to worship leading or facilities to whatever it is, or to coffee shop to this or whatever the your path is. Like not looking at it as like, well, I got promoted or that was a stepping stone. I think those are all terrible like analogies of what God is doing in your life when you're working in those ways. And when you're, I kind of think of it. I read a book during that time of God using 3 different people for David, and that David, King David in the Old Testament, that it wasn't just Jonathan that was someone that influenced his life, but Saul influenced his life, and the prophet Samuel influenced his life. So there was 3 humongous influential people in his life, but they were all like, it was all prepping him for what he was called to do, and that was to be king. And so it wasn't just, the good like friend, the best friend that was his like, preparation and what God was doing to prepare him to be king. It was also his enemy that he used to prepare him to be king. It was also the 30 mighty men that he had around him that was preparing him to be a leader, and the prophet that was over him, that was speaking over him and prophesying over him, that was preparing him to be a king. It was all of those things. And so when you're looking at it, it's like, man, if you're looking at it as a stepping stone, then you're missing out on what God could be preparing your heart for.
Come on.
And doing in your life, and trying to use in your life to go, this is all for what you're called to do, but don't miss out on the opportunity looking ahead of like, I'm just here as a stepping stone, or I'm just here to get promoted to something else. So it was great. I know for me it was just like I look back on those years of everything that I've done up until this point, and even in this point, like who knows what God what God does from here on out with both Miriam and myself, and just
Mayor
praying
of Las Vegas.
for great things. Yeah, in Las Vegas. So
It's in your future. I see it.
I believe
Don't miss
that
out on
Las
this
Vegas
moment.
Don't miss out.
is in my future.
I'm an influencer in your life. Don't just treat me like a stepping stone.
I can't.
So
That was so good.
Cool.
Ah.
It's awesome. So let's talk about, like, obviously everybody that watches this podcast is not a worship leader,
No.
though a lot of people probably are, or serving in their church in some capacity. What is, like, Tony, I know you lived in Seattle and California and here, and Miriam, you've been, like, born and
Here.
raised here, which,
That's
like, I'm
amazing.
sure is kind of like a rare thing.
It is.
Because in
Very rare to
Nashville, it's
find
also
somebody
very
else.
rare. Like
we call them unicorns.
Yeah.
I was gonna
Same.
say, yeah.
Yeah.
we have
I've never
unicorns in
met.
Nashville too.
I've probably met someone and didn't know it, but to actually hear it, this is the first
That's
time.
like lived here, like,
it's
your whole
even
life.
rarer to find them married.
Yeah, my husband's also born and raised.
Yo,
Yeah.
Those
Okay.
are called
Yeah.
Vegacorns.
Crazy. Wow.
he coined it here, people.
Dang.
Don't forget.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Vegacorns.
We're so blessed. Wow. So, like, let's talk about, though, like, what kind of, like, contextualizes doing church in Las Vegas that makes it, like, a unique experience from other places in the country? Because Vegas gets, like, a really bad rap, like, it's like, oh, there's, like, so much, it's Sin City and blah, 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 which, like, okay, yes, like, there's a lot of that, but, like, every city has areas that are like that, and they're known for various other things that might just not be so entertainment
exposed.
Covered in neon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, like, what do you think, like, just talk a little bit, like, both of you guys, about, like, what it's like to do ministry here, and, like, kind of how you kind of, like, have to be all things to all people, like, in Vegas, like, specifically.
It's
I just
fine.
let
You can
go
take a
first,
second to
then I
process.
can just say, like, the little bit after, but not the whole chunk of it. But I'll take the whole chunk of it.
Well,
Take what you have so much like great experience with this that I think.
Well,
you've got
I
great
think
wisdom.
the experience is not so much because it's like, oh, doing it right the whole time. Because, I mean, there's no, like, when you minister in this area, these are the things to do, and don't avoid these areas, do this. But the thing about Vegas that I've seen is it's a lot easier. At least this is what I feel like. It's a lot easier to address obvious sin in people's life and not, calling them out or anything. But when people come to church, they already know why they're there. And they know that they're seeking redemption.
wow.
And they know, like, well, I spend all my time at the strip clubs, and it's not weird for us to hear that. So, like,
Yeah.
what strip clubs? Like, oh my gosh. Or,
Mhm.
I'm a gambler. I'm a drug addict. It's just like, yeah, like, that's everywhere here.
Mhm.
You drive on the freeway and it's like billboard of this strip club, billboard of this casino. And it's not normal in the sense of, like, every time I drive by them, I, like, honestly pray for the people who drive past them every day that have become numb to it. But I think in that the ministering to people aspect, it's an open door for conversation.
Yeah.
To say, hey, where do you hang out? Or what do you like to do? And so if they
Yeah.
say, oh, I go to concerts, I do this, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's part of your life. It's not so out of reach for
Yeah.
us to know, yeah, like, there's bars and strip clubs everywhere.
Sure.
So in that sense, I think it's a lot easier. It's an open door conversation to be able to really get to know somebody genuinely,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
they're not ashamed to say, I work at a casino and I spend my time, at a strip club, and I spend my time doing this or whatever. So in that sense, it's really cool because it's not, like, uncommon to have those conversations, which to me
Yeah.
are genuine conversations,
Sure.
because it's okay, why, and what about this, and why are you here at church, or, so that's been my experience with it, especially churches that are close. We're pretty close to the strip, and churches that are even closer just get that, like, the person that's broke, the person that's like, man, I don't have money to catch the bus back home, or I just stop by here or whatever. And
Yeah.
churches that have food drives, and there's such a need here for, like, the homeless community and just the poor and the needy. And it's just cool to see the church being able to meet that need, and the church not be a weird thing.
That.
The church not being like a,
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to go there. Because all the
Ooh.
churches here, the churches I've attended at least, are very just open. Like, just come as you are.
Mm.
Because, like, what can we do? Like, there's nothing we can say. There's no judgment we can put on your expectation. It's like, we just want you to come.
Dang.
So
Yeah,
that's been
really
my
cool.
experience.
Yeah, I've been a part of so many different churches that I could go on forever of just like so many differences. Las Vegas just so I mean, every culture is so unique. So every
Yes.
state that you go to, every city you go to is so unique. And when I went to Nashville just recently and saw you guys in Nashville and stuff, like all the churches I went to out there too, it's just everything is so unique. You know?
Yes.
So it's beautiful. It's just the diversity that it's the gospel, right? The diversity that's in the body of Christ, which is a thing to celebrate.
Yeah.
And but I think like some of the differences, like culture in I kind of was talking to you guys about this yesterday, that culture in Las Vegas is a hospitality culture of we I don't want to say this in a rude way, but we kind of like copy so many cultures that it's hard to find like original culture of Las Vegas.
Okay.
You know, because everything
cool.
is
100% true.
trying to like for any kind of region around the world, we have something for them here. You know, we have food for them here. We have the looks and the vibe and even some of the structures, like the building structures and things like that, to make it feel like you're at home while you're away.
Wow.
And then as well have all the entertainment around that. And so like when I first moved out here, it felt very consumerism when I was out here, where even at Calvary, where we were building a culture in our own church. And I remember telling Nikki after we got done, Nikki's my wife, that when we got done with church, like the first church that I went, first service I went to at Calvary, and I experienced it at other churches too, so it wasn't just Calvary, but it was like the service ended and people walked out, and then they said hello to each other, and then they got in their cars and left. And I was like, well, what are we doing afterwards? And she's like, we're going home. And I was like, what do you mean we're going home? Where I'm from, it was Sunday is church day of like we hang out all day. You know, from we set up in the morning when I was at a setup church, and we go through service, we tear down, we go out to lunch, we watch a football game, and leave at night and stuff like that. So it was kind of like a whole day of just being with people, and so it was like we're building culture here, and it's still building. It's still like there's so much culture that is being created in Las Vegas, which is amazing. There's art that's being created, and there's a whole vibe that is trying to be created, and then in the midst of a lot of craziness, we had our shooting that happened a couple years ago, and we've had some of the worst unemployment here in Vegas in the first recession, a little over a decade ago, and then as well, even during the pandemic, we're seeing some of the craziest unemployment rates because everything is centered around entertainment.
Yes.
And so, so in the midst of a lot of really hard, crazy things, that we're trying to create this culture of like we're here for each other. We're here to help each other out, to help people who are in need, to help even right now as we're speaking, there's a food distribution that's on our property, and it's wrapped like 4 times around everything, because there's so many people who are in need of just getting meals, and just in need of food. And so it's different. It's a different culture here. We get made fun of, and we're called like they're like the church in Corinth, they were crazy. The church in Corinth was so crazy. It's like picture Las Vegas. That's how crazy Corinth was. It's like, cool. Thanks everybody. So like, we get this rap of that, but man, God's doing a great work here, and it's a different kind of ministry here. Where I'm from, someone got asked to step down from worship ministry because they became a bartender at like a restaurant, back in Washington, because it's like very conservative, the church culture there. And so it was like they got a job as a bartender, and it was like, hey, you got to step down from ministry. Like that's not cool.
Yeah.
The first person I met here in the first setup was a guy who was like a deacon at the church here, who's a craps dealer in
Yep.
the casino. And I was like, wait, that's allowed? Like, I thought
Yeah.
that's not allowed, So my whole Christian culture got turned upside down because to contextualize with our culture, you have to be in it.
Yeah.
And in our culture is so
Yes.
much different than everybody else's of how to
Wow.
contextualize
Yeah.
to it, So
Dang.
they've got people all throughout our church that are dealers and bartenders, and they have crazy ex-addict backgrounds
Yeah.
and stories, but then as well they've been redeemed through it, and so all different kinds of backgrounds and culture. It's really diverse and really fun. Makes it really fun.
This is it. This is the meat. The whole point of what I feel like God has asked us to do in the past 10 years is just understand the broad scope of the American church. You have 50 states. It's like everybody's a different country. It's basically what it is. And then there's cultures within the culture of the state, within the culture, within the culture, within the culture. Then you have cities alone, and then the pockets of stuff within that. So to be able to navigate church, to be able to not dress up the gospel, but to be able to contextually explain who Jesus is right in the middle of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It does look different than Nashville, period. Because, that's just something like there's a bunch of people within our church. It's like, yeah, they'll probably be playing music in the bars downtown. And for us, that's like a normal thing. I'm like, hey, when's your show? I'm going to come like later on because I'm supporting people.
Yeah.
And sometimes their music is just like, just fun and just out there into the world. But then there's other times when they're doing this kind of like, ask me a question afterwards because there's something inside of this that's got a little bit more meat in it. But I know that's why I love it here. I know that's why I love how you guys do church. I know that's why I love you two and Pastor Derek and people on staff and like volunteers and everybody, because yeah, it's true. When I meet people and they're like, okay, well, I got to go to work and they're heading over to the strip, I'm just go, wow,
Yeah.
they're going. Who else is going? Like,
Yeah.
that's so rad,
Yeah.
So just to hear that perspective from you guys, like it's so encouraging to me, because there have been so many other times in my life where I have been offended by culture somewhere, but it's because I don't live there. I don't understand what people are living out daily. And for God to be able to take all these blinders off after all of these years,
Yeah.
to see all of these different places doing church, presenting the gospel, loving people right where they're at, Like, I keep thinking about Jesus. He only had so many square miles that he went in his 3 years of ministry, and then everybody else had to go to the different places. And you look at how Paul is writing all these letters to these different churches, and he doesn't write the same thing to Ephesus as he does to Corinth, because contextually they're different places,
Yeah.
and the cities have different things, and the people within those places have different stories. So I don't know. I feel like this is incredible. You guys are just doing amazing stuff.
So I think that what you said at the beginning was really interesting. That kind of like ties a lot of things together about God doesn't necessarily call you to a place. He calls you to people.
Mm.
And I think like maybe in this last year, I think probably everybody would agree that technology has given everyone such a window into everybody else's worldview and into like what is
Wow.
acceptable, what's not acceptable, and what's your opinion, and what do you disagree with, and what are you getting on the bandwagon for, and what do you radically oppose, and what are you protesting, and what are you protesting the protesters about, like, and everything is so accessible because you can see the news from Seattle, and you can see the news from Nashville and from Los Angeles and from New York City, and all of these different things that are taking place politically and social justice wise, and like all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And in the background of all of it, unfortunately, it is in the background of all of it, is like the local church.
Yeah.
That's kind of like trying to figure out like how do we navigate all of these hot button issues that everyone has an opinion on and everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
And like I think for us, like what we have, we've always kind of like used that be all things to all people that Paul talks about, which is not saying like you dress up as like wherever you're going and just kind of like fit into the crowd,
No.
but it is being able to love people in a way that you can maybe like make sacrifices yourself of your own preferences and your own
Yes.
opinions to be able to have the language to communicate to them
Ooh,
effectively.
that's so good.
And especially like for us, like we only have a weekend to do that well, to make it like worthwhile. So it's like there is like that like laying down of my like things, not things that make me myself, but things that are just like standing in the way of being able to access people. And you know, like we sometimes we stay in hotels on the strip, and I know for a fact that there's people in my life that would be like, why are you staying down there? Why don't you stay at a different hotel? And it's like, because I want to see it. Like I want to know like what's going on. Like these are people like that live in this city. I'm not just going to like minister to like the good, like buttoned up, like everybody that goes to church. Like
Wow.
I'm going to the city to be able to get an understanding of like what God's doing in that city so that I can contextualize it elsewhere, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and so I think that it's really interesting. You know, you just said loving people rather than like loving a place. Maybe can you talk a little bit about like, trying to think of how to word this question.
You can do it. You got this.
Not saying that like there are things in scripture that get kind of like tossed to the side or something like that. Obviously, like the word is the word. We obey the word, and that is like absolute truth. But as far as like having those kind of like gray area temperature gauge things, like you said, you know, that somebody got let go for becoming a bartender, like in Washington, because their culture just does not accept that. So when you have access to all of these news stories and all of these social media pages of people that live everywhere, the tendency is to scroll through things and like kind of like cast judgment on people based on what you're seeing without having the context of like where they're at and why they're doing what they're doing. So like, can you just talk a little bit about like what that looks like going from place to place, like with the having the understanding that like I'm not really called to like these places, I'm called to the people of these places. And sometimes that looks like Jesus hanging out with the tax collectors and the you know, like all of the people that are culturally like judge, like dislike,
Cancel.
protest,
Cancel.
you know, like maybe speak a little bit about that, like as far as like the whole of our Christian culture is concerned right now with like the current political climate.
Yeah, you know, I think like obviously we have an issue, and and we talk about this in our with our pastors and stuff, that I don't know if I have ever seen in my lifetime. I've never seen the church divided as much as they are right now. You know, and some of the guys that I serve with that are older than me in some of their lifetimes, it's like, man, they've really never seen it in the condition that we're in right now. And honestly, if there was ever a time for Christians and the church to rise up and to say we have the answer, and we have the hope that everybody is searching for, like right now would have been that time, right? Like this whole last year and a half would have been that time to say, we got it. Like this is how to navigate through it. This is how we can have hope in the midst of crazy, you know, fear and chaos and all this stuff that happened. And yet I think everybody's so they're so concerned about what people's positions are, and like churches are even so concerned about, man, what we've got to get our position out there. Like what is our position on this issue? What's our position on this? And though like all of that is good, like I get that we do need some kind of position of where we're standing on, but what matters most is how you're living out your position. And so instead of spending all this time of like making sure you're saying the right thing and you know, making sure that everything that you do is being seen in the right way because you don't want to offend somebody, it's like there's hurting people out there. There's people that are really, really suffering and hurting, and what we could do right now is be that source of hope and of truth and of being able to go to these different areas and these different people, and to help them in their need, rather than trying to figure out what's my position on this, and rather than trying to figure out how do I say this the right way from our church's web page and all this kind of stuff. It's like, man, I want to help the hurting person more than let everybody know this is how we stand and this is what our position is. And I think so many people are so concerned about that and all the nuances of that. And then I think in our culture right now, we're so concerned about, especially as Christians, in kind of the church culture, we're so concerned about all of the different political things and all the different the different nuances of all the stuff going on with politics and injustice and everything like that there's issues on, but especially in the politics area, we're so concerned about different things and different issues that we're not concerned about the thing that gives people freedom, which is the gospel.
Come
and
on.
giving people true freedom. The change is not going to come from a different political leader. The change is not going to come from just different different programs that we offer, different things that we do. All of that helps bring the change, but the real change comes from the power of the gospel. That's where there's true power and true spiritual power is in the gospel. And so our pastor said just recently that if we were just as concerned about the gospel as we were with vaccines and our political party and all the different stuff and who we voted for, if we were just as concerned about the gospel as we were with that, the whole country would be saved by now. If we were that outspoken about the gospel and about who we our hope and our joy and our peace and the freedom that comes from a relationship with Jesus Christ, man, if we were that outspoken on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and everything, from our social media platforms and from our jobs and with our families and all that kind of stuff, it'd be I feel like there'd be so much more unity of being able to say, who cares about all the other stuff that we are fighting over? What people need right now is hope, and Christ is going to bring that hope. Not if you voted Republican or Democrat or independent or whatever. That's not going to bring hope. That brings zero hope to anybody, And so I think that has been the what we've been navigating through, especially as a church, is going not only where do we land, but how are we living that out? We can land on saying we need to help people in their need, but we're living that out by creating a food distribution place, and being able to invite people on our church property and say, if we're really concerned about it, we're not just going to say it, we're going to do it, and I think that, especially in church cultures, it's not just saying, I'm concerned about, pro-life or pro-choice or whatever. I'm concerned about pro-life and I believe that life matters. Well, then prove it. Prove that you believe life matters, not just by saying it from a post, but do something. Do something and be a part of that change, So yeah, that's what we've been navigating through and trying to help and disciple people through, and instead of getting caught up in stuff that's just a waste of time,
Well, I felt like you guys did that last night with an example. We actually were in Starbucks and on the way to church, and the barista that was at the drive-through window, we just started chatting because that's what we do. And he was like, "What do you guys have going on tonight?" And we're like, "Well, we're actually going to lead worship at a church." And he's like, "Oh, cool. What religion, And it just told him about Calvary Chapel Las Vegas. And Whitney was like, "Yeah, it starts at 6 and it'll probably end around 8-ish, 7:30, 8-ish. So if you want to come, you should come hang out." And he was like, "Well, I'll check it out, when I can. I get off kind of late for work for that." And I was like, "Yeah, dude, whatever. Just here's the name of it." So he writes it down on his phone and we drive away. And at the end of service, just y'all are transitioning into a new building, which is incredible. And just we're able to pray for everybody at the end. And I'm praying that people it just God's fun. He's fun. This is the fun side of God. I'm praying on stage like that people would just be on the strip and then that like they would find themselves at church 20 minutes later being like, I just felt like I was supposed to come here. I don't even know why. And lo and behold, this barista from Starbucks, he shows up last night. Right as I'm saying that, apparently, there's a dude that was outside and he was, helping with greeting people and one of the usher people. I'm not sure what his job is specifically, but he told me the story afterwards and he was just like, you just prayed that? And then he walked in and said, they told us about, I met these people. I'm supposed to meet someone. Like Whitney said to come here and talk to Tony. And he came up to our table afterwards and I just said, shut up. I just looked at him and I was like, are you kidding? But what I saw after that is I saw Miriam saying, yeah, we have a young adults group. You should come and be a part of that. And then I saw Tony going, oh, and find out that he's doing music like for college. And Tony's like, yeah, we should hang. Like, here's my information. Here's more stuff about church. Like, and he's only been here 3 months, but it's like, that was one person. But the intentionality behind the one person is what was propelling the gospel forward. Whether or not this guy knows the fullness of God and what he's doing.
If you post something on Instagram and you're like, you need to be nice to your baristas because they're people too, and then you like don't actually
ever nice?
Are nice to them, like that story still doesn't happen. Whereas like we didn't need to post anything about it. Like it wasn't a platform that we were like, we have this platform. We have decided as a culture that we are nice to baristas at Starbucks. Like, it's like, it doesn't need to, like, all of the platforms get decided very easily. Like, when your main thing is being actively representative of the gospel to people. Not, like, what they're doing or what their vocation is or trying to change, like, whatever their, like, most advertised sin habit is. It's like just loving the person.
Well, and to what you said, Miriam, it was just, you're very full of wisdom, by the way. I did not know that you're 24. Good grief. I know that you know this because obviously you're like, yeah, I told you.
I basically.
That's why we hired her.
But the depth of your wisdom in you saying, and it sounds so simple, but yeah. If you judge someone right off the bat as they walk through the door, you're a Pharisee, flat out.
Yep.
You're a Pharisee, and you rob someone the opportunity to see Jesus for real. And I think that's the conviction that needs to propel us into action when we hear stuff like, "Oh, Vegas." It's like, no. Jesus said, "Hey, Zacchaeus, I'm coming over to hang." Zacchaeus was the worst. He was the worst. Nobody liked him. He had to actually climb a tree to feel better about himself and in hopes to get a look of someone who would help him get out of his situation. And there are people that are doing that over and over and over again in all kinds of church circumstances, not just in this city, but to hear you guys is you saying like the judgment part of people walking through the door. And it's like, they already know why they're coming. It's like, great, let's just add more pressure and a nice big hammer. But instead, what I see you do, as you did with that guy last night, is you said, come hang out, small group, come meet a bunch of people. Like, let's eat food, let's do life. Our pastor at home, where you're loved into your purpose. That Jesus did a really good job of that. Jesus didn't excuse anybody's stuff, but he didn't forgo the opportunity to extend intimacy in relationship in order to protect themselves from maybe getting a little messy.
There's no like prerequisites
There
to
is.
participating.
Yeah. We're going through a study with a missionary in a church named Leona Carney, and something she just said recently, which I was like floored by, and I'm trying to apply in my life. She said, when God corrects his children, he doesn't correct them and just leave it at that and tell them this is what you did wrong. But he reminds them of their purpose, and he reminds them why he wants them on this, not doing this, but doing this. Like, and like just as an example, it's like and I'm not saying this is in the Bible, but it's like, okay, David, you messed up. And it's not you messed up, feel bad for it, but it's like you messed up, like you're called to so much more. And I think in the church, especially with new believers, it's like, yeah, we're sinners, but it's not for us to just feel like, man, I suck. And
Come on.
I
Come
can't do
on.
anything. And God, I'm never going to be enough. But it's like, God has so much more for me for his glory and for my goodness. And I, not to say I deserve better, but it's like with his help, I can do better, And so when people come in and they have that willingness to say, all right, here I am. But they keep messing up. It's like, all right, like, I'm not just going to push you to the side and say, well, your opportunity is over, you messed up. But it's like, there is a calling on your life, and God loves you. And it's like my responsibility as a Christian, as your sister in Christ, to just remind you of that. Like you have a calling, And so when there is like correction or repentance, it's not like anytime, and Pastor Derek said this yesterday when he was giving the altar call, we have people come up every now and then, he'll invite them to the altar. And in the morning service, he said, I know you don't have to come up here. Like God will move if you stay in your seat, but trust me, he will move more if you come to the front, because you're taking a step of faith. And if he went to the cross for you, you can come here. And he said, it doesn't, like, you have to come because it lifts off the weights. And there's been times where I've even gone up, and for sure, it just completely like reminds you, like, we're all equal at the foot of the cross. And sometimes you have to do that to be reminded, like, all right, like there is a purpose, and this is just part of the process kind of thing, It's been really cool to see so many people come to know the Lord, but also just the heart of the church as a whole, not just like the pastors, but the church as a whole, to just love them to the word, and love them to Jesus.
Who is this chick?
Okay.
I told you Miriam has wisdom.
Tony was like, do you want Miriam to come on this podcast? I was like, if she wants to, she's more than welcome to. And he's like, I mean, I don't know if you just want me. It's like, now that I think about
Now
it, you're
everybody
right.
listening is going, thank you for getting Miriam and not just
Thank you
Tony.
so much. Before we started filming this, Tony was on his own little man-made soapbox about a water bottle
That's right.
made of glass.
It's really important
We're
to
not
drink
doing
water.
this.
And let me tell you, if you're a worship
Sweet,
leader, it is
sweet God.
even more important to drink water, because you have to take care of what God has given you, and that is your vocal cords. And I almost ruined mine because I wasn't drinking enough water. Because the desert, as these girls can
Yo.
attest to,
It's
is
real life
a
thing.
It's
different
real life.
beast. And you don't really realize that until it's a little too late. So
Just recently started sleeping with a humidifier on, and it's changed my life.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Mary Pat travels with a
immensely.
humidifier
That's
when we come
great.
out here. to
Yes,
these
you
places.
have to.
If we're here longer than like a couple days, it's like
Yeah.
we bring a humidifier. And are literally wherever it's on all day long.
Yes, we
so
come
when we
back.
come back into the room, it's like
Yeah.
a jungle. Like, it's like I feel like I'm in like Vietnam.
getting
This
through
is
the
so
mist.
good. For real. Like, look at these palm trees.
Like
It's
I can lick
amazing.
the air. Thank you so much.
I think that's a good place.
That's great. Yeah,
That was
I feel
amazing.
very fulfilled by this
Right?
conversation.
You guys, I'm not going to tell you how much I love you again and again and again, but I will in other things. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you guys for doing this. Like, anybody listening that is looking for wisdom, like these two girls have got it going on. And so these girls have a lot of love for churches, for people who are struggling, for ministry leaders who are struggling, worship leaders who just need an extra oomph to keep going. And these girls are the real deal. So encourage you guys to hear what God is doing in and through their lives, and the wisdom that they give, because they bless me every time I'm with them and get to speak with them. So, and these are great people here. So
If you're ever in Vegas, you guys know you got family here, so
Shut
Calvary
up.
welcome to
Chapel,
come.
Las
Her with the
Vegas.
clutch ending. I can't. You guys, this has been Mary Pat, Whitney, Miriam, and Tony. We are Matters Over Miles. We love you guys. And that my other camera just went off. So I guess I'm looking at this
Camera
one.
2.
Dang it.
Camera 2 is
We've done
failed
so good. We love you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Matters Over Miles podcast, a resource of Water Within Ministries. If you would like to be a supporter of the show, head over to